Attorney General for Guyana, sir. Welcome once again.
Thank you, Yog, and thank you for the important contribution that you have made, that Kaichua Radio has made to the fight for restoration of democracy in our country. You stood on the side of democracy all day, day in, day out, and you and the owner of the radio outfit, Mr. Glenn Lal and Mr. Gildari, and all the staff that supported you in that endeavor, we must recognize the significant role that you played in saving our country and pulling it back from the precipice of near disaster. So thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I want to say a special good evening to all our viewers and listeners across Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, and I know for the field, I know your viewership and audience is very wide and very embracing. So it's a
Correct.
pleasure to be here.
Thank you, sir. And so we want to start tonight, ladies and gentlemen. No time to waste. And Mr. Nandlall, AG, sir, there is a particular letter to which you responded recently that I'd like us to start our discussion with, because this matter of political appointees, it it is almost a point of anger. A lot of Guyanese people feel insulted that public servants have reached to the stage where they're double dipping and triple dipping, quadruple dipping in some instances in the public's treasury. Taxpayers are paying some people 4 or 5 times from different ministries, but especially, let's deal with the big one first. I believe Mr. Harmon would have been your batchmate, if I'm not wrong. You guys may have studied together at some stage, but there has been an exchange of a memorandum between you two. What's the latest on that, sir?
Mr. Harmon and I go back a very long way. We have always had very friendly relationship. When this impasse, this unfortunate political impasse arose, I was quite shocked at the behavior of Harmon and the utterances which emanated from Harmon. And nothing changed after the results were declared. Harmon demonstrated during that 5-month period his utter contempt for the rule of law, for our constitution, for the will of the people, and for the tenets of democracy. He shamelessly trampled upon those concepts. And after the results were declared, one would have thought that, he would have adjusted his behavior. Lo and behold, the new government is sworn in, and Harmon's conduct, Harmon's writings, Harmon's utterances continue to be irrational, completely irrational. For a person of Harmon's stature, the General Secretary of APNU, and the virtual deputy head of the Presidential Secretariat, to think that he can continue employment under a PPP administration is a manifestation of mental disequilibrium of the highest proportion. You cannot be a rational mind to think, as Harmon thought, that we would sit down with him, as he said in the press, and negotiate a collaboration whereby he seemed to think that he can continue to function in the office of the president. And that is why I said in my response to him that, having regard to the antics which he displayed during that 5 months period and the utterances that he made during that period, and having regard to the content of his letter and what he said in the press, it is clear that reason has not yet resumed its natural seat, because reason departed him. during those 5 months period. And I thought that there would have been some cooling time through which or by which reason would have returned. But he's obviously not a master of his own mind, even up to now. And that is what that letter sought to portray. Sinecure appointments, sinecure appointments are immoral, if not unlawful.
AG,
Political appointments
but AG,
have no, yeah, sorry.
before you go on to the sinecure appointments and the political appointments, which is, we want to hear some more. Just to zero in on the Harmon matter a little bit more. Sir, if Harmon is claiming that there is a fraudulent government in process, whatever convolutions it is, his letter states that he does not recognize the government because it is fraudulent. And as a lawyer, sir, can you help us understand what does he recognize then? Because Harmon is not, Granger is not the president. So what would be with Ms. Harmon say he's recognizing?
Harmon, first of all, Joseph Harmon, accusing or describing this government as fraudulent is akin to a prostitute proclaiming virginity at a brothel. That's the first point I want to make. The second point I want to make is that Harmon describes the government as fraudulent, but at the same time is offended that the government is not inviting him to continue to work with the government because he wants to be part of the government. And that is what he says.
Right.
So that's the second point. Then the third point, though he accuses the government of being fraudulent, he demands contractual benefits from the very fraudulent government. And when one takes all of that into account, one is obliged to conclude that you're not dealing with a man whose faculties are fully in place.
Right.
Harmon doesn't recognize my authority according to him. My authority is derived from the Constitution. I am the legal advisor of the government of Guyana. It is the government of Guyana that he is seeking to engage, that he claims is fraudulent. So the fact that he doesn't, I am not surprised, firstly, that he doesn't recognize my authority, because my authority is derived from the Constitution, a document that he is demonstrably unfamiliar with. And that was made clear during the whole election saga. In fact, him and his entire administration are absolutely unfamiliar with that document, hence their actions. So I'm not surprised that he doesn't recognize my authority.
But AG, who, look, I mean, the truth is for all our brothers and sisters out there, if the gentleman has, we heard, applied for leave, it is you who would have to address whether that leave is due based on his contracts, isn't it?
Exactly. And then, what kind of fraudulent government grant him leave? Can a fraudulent government pay him his contractual benefits? When you engage with a fraudulent agency, the transaction itself becomes infected with the very fraud that you are alleging. And it's all those reasons that I said what I said. Also importantly, is that Harmon, you know, the mere fact that this guy thinks that he can continue to work is utterly bizarre. Continue in employment. And you know, what he also does not appreciate is that his own president terminated his contract. He relies upon a contract, and the contract, if you go back to the contemporaneous clippings in the news, the president, the secretary to the office of the president or the ministry of the presidency is the one who signed the contract. The president appointed him director general, and the president disappointed him the president made that very clear, that Mr. Harmon is being removed from the position of director general and is appointed head of the task force. Let him produce the contract that he has for the task force. That is the extant contract under which he was operating. And that is the contract for which he must get benefits. If he wants, he's supposed to have settled his contractual entitlements with President Granger at the time when President Granger removed him from that contract or from that contractual office. As I pointed out, the office is not constitutional. The office is not statutory. It's not created by any legislation. The office is therefore contractual, created through political expediency. So at the time when he was removed from that office, the office didn't exist any longer. The office went with him. The office was created for him. And when he was removed from the office went with him. So there is no office of director general anywhere in the public sector of this country, other than director general of foreign affairs ministry, which was a position, maybe they have it in a permanent establishment, but there's no director general in the ministry of the presidency. So when Mr. Granger removed him from that position, Granger terminated his contract and he did not object. He complied with the transfer or secondment or whatever it is that you want to call it to his new appointment without objection. And that is why I intimated in the letter that the contract would have been mutually terminated, because the contractor and the contractee, by their conduct, terminated the contract and apparently created a new post, head of the task force, for which Harmon is not claiming any entitlement, and I can't find a contract because there was none. So he obviously was operating on a month-to-month oral contract in that capacity. And a rational lawyer would have been able to understand all these concepts that I am explaining, because they are elementary contractual principles.
Maybe one last question on this, Harmon, and you mentioned the COVID task force. The Ordinance 145, I think, Health Ordinance, Chapter 145, under which Granger would have created that task force, upon which he would have named Walter Lawrence et al. And the Minister of Finance, then Minister of Finance et al. Has that been legally put aside in any way, or is that something that could be held on to?
Well, the president exercised, as you know, that is a 1945 ordinance. So right there, without more, that tells you that we need to overhaul the public health legislation framework. It is close to 80 years old, clearly, and we need to get a brand new legislative framework in the public health sector. That being said, the president is in essence exercising the powers of the crown. If you read that legislation, it's a British legislation predating independence, and it speaks to the Governor General. The president, for practical purposes, assumes the powers of the Governor General, and the powers are indeed wide and sweeping, especially in the face of a pandemic. And the president has a whole repertoire of powers to take decisions, establish agencies and organizations and units and organs, etc., as the exigencies of the environment and the situation may warrant. And it is from that perspective that the task force was established. We have, in essence, continued that framework. It was duly gazetted, making it a subsidiary legislation, and the COVID new guidelines, which I assisted Dr. Frank Anthony in drafting, were basically utilized the same framework, and all we did was to adjust the language to meet our response to the pandemic. Your voice, your volume.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for that. And if you don't mind, sir, can you walk us through a little bit this thing about political appointees and all the matters there? Because we're seeing a lot of things coming out there, sir. And while you're addressing that, would at any time the documents of some of these political appointments be made public?
Well, all right. Now, in politics, Yog, there are necessarily going to be political appointments. There is no doubt about that. That is real politics. That is the reality. And that is pragmatic politics. There is no political party in the world that can proclaim that it does not make political appointments. It makes those political appointments and pays them a reasonable remuneration package. And it is expected that when the tenure of that political party in government comes to an end, those political appointments automatically are terminated. That is the understanding. It may not be written anywhere, but that is the practice in real politics. You have political appointments, the appointees enjoy a fair comparative remuneration package. They are expected to function in political capacities, do political work / government or public work, and they go when their party goes out of government. It's as simple as that. Sinecure appointments are illegal, and appointments, political appointments where the political appointees receive numerous remuneration packages under various agencies and may not even doing an iota of work. Obviously, that is an abuse of public funds. That is that is corruption. That is nepotism. That is bad governance. And what we are discovering in government is the entire governmental architecture is replete with examples and manifestations of this. And I can call names. Carol Joseph, for example, a known political activist, member of the PNC, candidate on the list, devoid of any technical qualification, as far as I am aware, holds about 3 positions in various ministries: Ministry of Communities, Ministry of Natural Resources, where I believe she's a petroleum advisor, and some other appointments in the region. Then I believe, I'm told that she is also employed or used to be employed with the Hugo Chavez Institute in Region 5. Ganesh Mahipal, his name is all over the place on the different payrolls of the different ministries. Now, how can that ever be acceptable? And then you have a whole list of people who are not even working in the ministries, but they are being paid out of the treasury, and their names are on the payrolls of these ministries. At some point in time, I've asked already, and at some point in time it will be done. We will have to audit the wage bill in the public sector, and you will see the gloat. you will see the growth. Every sector preponderates with an overload of employees who are unqualified, who are not needed in the system, and they are given contracts to the disadvantage of the people in the permanent establishment. Now, at the Attorney General Chambers, for example, you have lawyers who work 245,000. They take home salary, their net salary is about 190,000, thereabouts. Scattered all across the public sector are lawyers. I don't know what they're doing, but they work over 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, $1 million, $1.2 million a month on contract with a gratuity of 22.5% every 6 months. They get duty-free concessions and they get a host of allowances. How is that fair to the poor lawyer in the Attorney General office who has to represent the state of Guyana, the government of Guyana? These lawyers that are scattered all about the place, they work for a sector or an agency, or worse yet, a single person. You have, I looked at the contract of this person, Tamara Khan, a year-to-year contract, fixed term, no termination clause. The contract sum is nearly $8 million for 1 year to do work to be assigned in the office of the Prime Minister. And no work there's no evidence of any work done. And must get a monthly allowance of a minimum of $650,000 a month. So you have a fixed term lump sum contract, no exit clause, and payment must be made on the face of it on a quantum meruit basis, but no work is produced. But still there is a safety valve that says you must pay minimum $650 per month.
Wow.
Now that contract comes to an end in November. So that person would have received nearly $7 million. And there is absolutely no evidence to show what that person has done. And that person's husband is working in the same office, Imran Khan, as some advisor to the Prime Minister. And this is a guy who used to lecture this country night and day about the morality of politics, about accountable government and transparent government. These people are a shameless bunch of people. I don't mind you are a politician and you do politics. I don't mind that. But you can't have these skeletons in your closet. These kinds of skeletons, the magnitude of what I'm speaking about, and you're lecturing the country as though you are the Pope. I don't know if these guys thought that these things will never come to light. And there's so much more that will come to light in the next few weeks and months that are not made public right across the sector. And I reflect now at some of the things that these guys were doing and saying, educated people, lawyers, and I wanted to know if these people were insane. Why were they doing these things? Why were they saying these things? Now that I am seeing, I now realize why. And the public will understand why in due course. Not long from now.
So, A.G., did you, let's get to two questions for you. One is that in terms of political appointees, under your former office as AG yourself, the PPP would have had its own political appointees then. And I think there were some stark instances where persons were just moved from, accommodated in certain jobs. What would be your comment to the political appointees during the PPP's former administration as compared to now? And two, What about the AG chambers? Were there any persons there that you find that you, you had to deal with?
Firstly, I think the first part of your question you addressed to political appointments in the AG chambers during my time. Is
No,
that the focus, or generally PUP government?
yeah.
As I said, every political party will make political appointments. In my view, there is nothing wrong with that. That is the nature of real politics. So you had in the office of the president, for example, persons of the stature of Gail Teixeira, advisor to the government or advisor to the president on governance, political appointment. You had Odinga Lumumba, you had many persons. When we lost the elections, we went away. You pack up, you do your handing over, and you part company. Do you recall any PPP person whose appointment could have been described as a political appointment who stayed on beyond the change of government?
Mm-hmm.
So that an issue arose? You can't recall any.
Yeah.
That because there was none. Because we understood that these are appointments that were based upon the tenure of you holding government as a political party. And once that tenure comes to an end, that is the end of your employment.
Right.
Now, the AG office, every minister is entitled to his personal secretariat. Those are political appointments. Like I need my own confidential secretary. I need my own personal secretariat. And each minister over the years, there has developed a practice of each minister appointing their own secretariat. Right. In all fairness to Basil Williams, well, at least to the secretariat, they went with him. And I didn't have to, all I had to do, or the PS had to do, was to formally terminate. The AG office is a small operation, as you would expect. And it's made up, the staff are largely professional. Now, if you are professional, then it's difficult to determine whether your appointment is political. I can't look at a lawyer and say, you were appointed here because the man is a lawyer or the woman is a lawyer. And you have to qualify. Right. You understand?
Yes.
So the problem doesn't present itself in such a stark way in my ministry, fortunately or unfortunately. But it is very ensconced and prevalent in the other ministries right across. And you would have seen the various ministers speaking about it and making documents public, etc.
So, AG, I want to talk a little bit about a particular $1 billion contract for the what was formerly known as the Ocean View Hotel. And to that, part A probably first, before you address the Ocean View contract. Would you think that all of these contracts and all of these appointments and all of these payouts, plus things like the Ocean View Hotel contract, might have been the contributory reasons why the APNO ASC held on for 5 months or were willing to hold on for a longer period of time?
Certainly, what they did in office, they know cannot withstand scrutiny of any competent and professional type. The Auditor General and forensic auditors, when that time comes, will have a field day. The members of the Guyana Police Force, if they are called upon to investigate, will have a gold mine within which to operate. They, even before we got into government, I spoke about that contract. Firstly, it is a capital project, and there is and the sum is $1 billion or 1.6 billion. There's a capital project. Acquisition of an entire hotel can be current, and there is no and it's the money is taken from the consolidated fund without any parliamentary oversight. That is clearly in violation of the Constitution. Clearly in violation of the Constitution. And we said that from the beginning. So that's one.
Yep.
Two, you have the question of whether the money, whether it was not a reckless decision. And I'm speaking now in terms of law. Would the law is, would a competent minister of finance invest that volume of money in the circumstances on that property? And that question will have to be embraced and confronted at some point in time.
Right.
What are the factors to take into account? One, was such a facility needed? Is 1.6 billion a reasonable cost to expend on the facility? Thirdly, is it a government property? Fourthly, what did 1.6 billion expended achieve? What did it achieve?
Right.
And for each of those issues, the question will have to be, would a prudent, reasonably competent finance minister preside over that kind of expenditure and authorize that kind of expenditure? Mm-hmm. Speaking for myself, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think that contract and that project is tainted with criminal recklessness and criminal negligence. After spending all that money, they rented the place. That's the first thing. So you acknowledge, that minister knew that you're spending $1.6 billion on a property that the government doesn't own, because you cannot be in doubt. You signed a rental agreement. Mm-hmm. It is not that now somebody is bringing a letter and professing to own it. They rented it. And remember, a minister of finance, like every other minister, owe a fiduciary duty to the taxpayer in relation to the expenditure of taxpayers' funds. Right. It's the same kind of responsibility that a director owes to a shareholder.
Right.
Would a director transform it into a private company or a public company? Imagine a director of a company using shareholders' funds in that way. Are you telling me that those shareholders are without legal remedy against him? Cannot be. The law is not that inadequate. Right. So I am saying, so you have that money being spent on private property. Then you begin a process, I see, based upon what is published in the newspapers, to compulsorily acquire. Would that, you rent the man property, you do not pay him rent, and you are now purporting to compulsorily acquire the property? From top to bottom of this transaction smacks of illegality and conspiracy too, because I don't know what role this man was playing, Rambaran.
Right.
He doesn't. I don't get the impression, because he rented first, then he go and get himself a valuation for some 15 million US. Never asked a day, never sent a rent. Rent has not paid for a whole year. Has not sent a letter asking for rent. When the new government comes into power and gets into office, you write us. So the whole transaction has to be forensically examined and appropriate action taken. What I
And
can tell you, quite apart from process, what I can tell you, and any person listening to us can go there, any person qualified in quantity valuation can go there and see what was achieved or accomplished with 1.6 billion.
right. And Vice President Jagdeo would have commented recently that the owner would have to wait a very long time, quote unquote, for his matter to be dealt with. But he did explain that because the government has so much other matters to deal with. But sir, you are now raising a number of things there, not just the financial part of it, but the whole background, whether there was collusion, whether there has been criminal activity, and also you did point out that where the owner seems to have been very silent while everything was going on and all of a sudden has raised. So that's very interesting, and thank you for that, sir. I want to take you now to something that we would have discussed away from all these elections and politics. We're going to come right back to it, I promise you. But sir, something you and I would have discussed probably 2 months ago while you were in opposition, or while you were government in waiting. And we did talk about the extrajudicial killing. I continue to receive notes of interest and points of interest. And my question to you, Attorney General, will your government at some stage establish a commission of inquiry into extrajudicial killing?
First of all, matters of commission of inquiry fall exclusively within the domain of His Excellency the President under the Commission of Inquiries Act. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to second guess the President, neither do I wish to speak for and on behalf of the President. I am sure that you will get an opportunity and you can pose that question to him. What I would like to say, though, is that the allegations of extrajudicial killing has largely come from the APNU/PNC. And they have had 5 years. They campaign on that every election. Every election. In 2015 election, they campaigned heavily on that. Go back, look at their manifesto, look at their rallies, look at all their lobbying materials. You will see extrajudicial killing. They got into government. They hold a commission of inquiry into some call Mr. Granger received. They hold a commission of inquiry into a traffic accident on the East Bank. They hold a commission of inquiry into some policemen fighting at the Ivlery. They hold commission of inquiries yog into about almost everything under the sun. And the very thing that they keep talking about over and over again, about holding a commission of inquiry into, they refuse to do so. Though it was a significant political issue for them. They made it a political issue. They made it a political issue, and that is why they can't deal with it. They made the killing of Crummy Wing a political issue. And while they were in government, on your program, I called upon them to do the investigation into Crummy Wing killing. Hold the commission of inquiry into Crummy Wing killing. They can't do it. That is what they know to do well. Stablook News, as you know, did a whole center spread, a special edition, where they published names of policemen who were killed by bandits.
Yes.
Names of people who were killed a husband killing his wife,
Mhm.
people dying on the road by traffic accidents. And they were all lumped into this category of judicial killing.
Right.
So
Yes.
they created their own propagandistic monster. It is all those foolishness that got them out of office today.
But AG, if it is not I will certainly ask the president when I get to talk to him, because if it is not something that is dealt with, it will be something that you are going to carry into the 2025 election, because it is political season then again. And also, I just want to hark right back to quite a number of years ago under the Desmond Hoyt slow fire, more fire thing that was done, protest was done, and whether any inquiry would have been held into the killings then and the rapes and so forth from, I think, Ravi Dev and so forth would have been agitated for some of that then. Um, yeah, go on.
Um, nothing was done then. Um, no, I don't think anything was done then. You had where Blackie London
Mhm.
was hero worshipped, and they use his coffin and they put the flag and they drag it around Georgetown, and he was a notorious criminal,
So,
and they
80,
converted him into a hero.
thank you for that. And I would still like to, on behalf of our viewers and listeners, still like to urge the government to make something definitive about the extrajudicial killings, especially those, as Selwyn Peters would have commented about 2 weeks ago, that people somehow feel that when 2015 happened and APNU FC got into office, extrajudicial killing stopped. But it continued. There were things that would have been questioned and questionable under the APNU AFC government, and those things need to be made public.
Yeah, look, the crime wave never stopped. In fact, it increased.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
You had internal violence in the prisons that never. In fact, we have never had so much problems in the prison.
Correct.
18 prisoners died in a fire. That is not is that extrajudicial killing too? The judiciary didn't kill them.
Well,
Anything. What is extrajudicial killing?
it need to be dealt with because it would end up in that list. Remember, Balder would have said 500,000, so it needs
Yeah,
to be
well,
dealt.
Yog, that is why it is insane utterances like that they didn't even put her in the parliament. You see that she's not on the list to go back to parliament?
Well, yes, and certainly
Yes,
that is
well,
what we deal with.
so is those are the things that have them out of government after 5 years.
So, AG, question for you from one of our viewers. If you can comment on reportedly your barring of some lawyers for pursuing masters in legislative drafting.
Well, I am glad somebody showed me. In fact, the two young ladies who wanted to go on the scholarship on the program came to me and showed me the article. It is some gutter outfit that is operated by APNU. One of the now Yog. Firstly, it is I who started the impact program when I was Attorney General. That's the first thing. With a Professor Newton in Barbados. A component of that program was supposed to come to Guyana, where a master's in legal drafting was supposed to be brought to Guyana. But I left government and that never happened. They did the program at Cave Hill campus, Barbados. Now, there is a new government, I have just entered office. I know where the financial state of this country is. We don't have money even to do the budget for the next 4 months, because that is what we are engaging in now. All the ministries, only today, the budget submissions were made to the Ministry of Finance. I am aware of the state's financial dire state. I am aware also that I spoke to the two young ladies, and I asked them to write to defer. I am also aware that our government has a different outlook and approach to scholarship. It's not going to be done by sector. It's going to be centralized to the Ministry of Public Service. Also, I have to look at what is the current needs of this country. Does this country need 2 more LLM students, masters in drafting, or we need more kits to test for COVID? Or we need more masks? So I am not worried about blocking anybody. That is not this government's priority. It is as simple as that. These are two young ladies. I don't know, and I don't want to malign them, but nobody explained to me how the two of them were chosen and not the others who have worked for years in the department. But I'm not going to get into that. So I could talk whole night on that decision alone. But the point is that it is not my, and I have no apologies. It is not this Attorney General priority at this point in time to burden the Treasury and the public. This is not me money. I have to pay, the government of Guyana has to pay economic cost to Barbados for these two students. Should I, as a public officer entrusted with making decisions in relation to public funds, is that the best decision I can make with this money? Couple few thousand US dollars? Or I could bring in more drugs to treat COVID? Or I could contribute to our schools being remodeled to accommodate a reopening for COVID. That is this government's priority right now, and getting the economy going.
Right. Got you. So, AG,
I'm not worried about that. And tell that caller or whoever sent you that message that Anil Nandlall said he could talk whole night on that one issue.
That's right. So, AG, question from Kiana Wilbur from Kaichor News for you. What is your preliminary assessment of your predecessor's performance and the measures you have to take to improve the nation's legal affairs?
It's not my preliminary assessment. I was following my predecessor step by step. That was part of my responsibility as a shadow minister of the Legal Affairs Ministry. And his performance has been poor, very poor, very poor, very poor. Starting with poor, and he became poorer, very poor, till at the end it was zero. And that is my frank assessment. Nothing has been done in this sector. Not a single legislation passed other than the bills that they rejected, the AML-CFT bills that they rejected while they control the opposition. Right? They didn't pass any new bill. None. 2, I left important bills ready. The man did not even pass that. He could have passed that and taken the credit. All the cases of substance, he lost. And that is a public knowledge. I mean, I don't have to get into that. I don't know which area did he redeem. I don't know what he did. I don't know what he did in 5 years. I believe these people just used to go to work and go home back. In all the departments where we left it in 2015, that's exactly where it is. You go back. Of course, they do a lot of aesthetics. They're like that. Like the office of the president is shining, they polish up and fancy woodwork and so on. And we appreciate that. But nothing that would advance the lives of Guyanese and nothing that advanced the developmental agenda. In fact, they retarded progress. They spent a lot of money. And as I said, Kiana Wilbur will be invited to a press conference, and I will show where my predecessor excelled. I will show where he spent public funds as though he's going out of style. And that is why he makes decisions like these. He makes decisions without thinking,
Have you seen any?
Send people to study. Not a reasoned decision, not a decision that takes into account, whether we need that, whether that is the best use of taxpayers' money. Those considerations, I've never seen evidence of them being taken into account.
Have you seen any bills coming in from any of those lawyers that would have been retained from Trinidad or elsewhere to fight on behalf of the AG?
They are all here, and I'm getting them more, and they will be released, and you will see them.
And are you going
Anna Wilborg, she has a lot of writing to do in the near future.
Okay, great. And another question, oil and gas, of course, needs massive legislative overhaul. Again, this is from Kiana. Have you engaged the necessary experts for this critical task as yet?
Please remind Kiana that I'm only 2 weeks in office. This is my actual second week, right?
Yeah.
So remind her. Kiana believes that I'm here 2 years now. But no, the answer to that is no right now, but I recognize the need to build personnel in that regard. And that is the area, for example, that I will consider important to send people to study. Great. Oil and gas and particular areas of oil and gas, not generically. You have a master's, everybody doing oil and gas, but what aspect of oil and gas? Right. We got to do the oil and gas, the parts that are relevant to us. Oil and gas and the environment. We have to balance. So it is a priority of mine, but it's only 2 weeks. I had to do budget. We have to work with the office of the president. You have to assist the other ministers as they get settled in, etc., etc. But the issue is recognized, and that is important.
Right, AG, just let's go over to GCOM if you don't mind. I know I know you're tired, and I'm really pushing it at you here. GCOM, COI, and the wherewithal of Messrs. Mingo and Lowenfield as being an undercurrent employee.
First of all, the PPP, prior to going into government, during that whole saga, we pledged to the people of Guyana that the GCOM matter will be tackled frontally on many fronts. The president, in his inauguration speech, dedicatedly focused direct attention to that issue and publicly committed his government to that process.
Did we lose you? I think we're having some internet problems here. Kevin, you're there, right?
Yes, I'm here. I'm
exercise certain degree of restraint. And please appreciate that. But as soon as it is available to make information public, they will be made public, because we want to show also. We want the public, we understand we were the victim of the fraud. And just like the public, we want to know what went on. Right. And what I will do here is to renew our pledge to leave no stone unturned as we get to the bottom of it. But we are going to do it, and that's why maybe it's taking some time. We will do it the legal way and the professional way.
So, AG, on top of that, would the PPP consider filing an election petition itself?
Well, when you file an election petition,
I know it's inimical to your own role in office, right?
You have to ask for reliefs. What reliefs are we asking for? We can't ask for seats that we are not entitled.
But who knows? I mean, if this thing has been so screwed up as it appeared to have been, who knows what the truth is?
There was an attempt to screw it up. The attempt did not succeed. Had the attempt succeeded, we would not have been in government. So we managed to avert the screwing up. But what we want to know is who were behind the attempts,
Right.
the intellectual authors and the actual executioners. And we
But
want to know what motivated.
But do you feel that the Commission of Inquiry will get to that? Or will it have to go to a court and will it ultimately, I mean, I am personally, from a citizen of Guyana perspective, I am eager for the PNC to get on, no AFC to get on with their elections petition. I want to see this thing in front of the courts and people being hauled in front and have to swear and give testimony.
Well, that's correct. I am also anxiously awaiting. I am also anxiously awaiting. I would love for them to put the witnesses in the witness box and let them tell me about the dead voters. I want Keith Lowenfield in the witness box. I want all of those who played a part in the witness box. And once the matter is filed, we have them right there. And it's going to be quite a theater. It will be quite a theater. But that's one component.
Right.
That's one component. There are got other investigations that will have to go. It's not one type of law was violated. Fraud was committed. The criminal laws were violated. You see, this thing is not about PNC alone and about an election petition alone. This is about the system.
Right.
This is about deterring the occurrence or reoccurrence of what transpired. This is about cleansing the system, repairing the holes and the gaps to make a system stronger for future elections. 2020 elections are not our last election. We have elections in 5 years. We are going to go back with the same institutional weaknesses? Not at all. So there are going to be an overhaul and a review from many perspectives and for different reasons. But at the end of the day, we hope that the public would be satisfied that we did a great deal in our attempts to improving the system, while at the same time bringing to justice those who may have committed offenses.
Right. So, AG, still on the same point of GCOM, would it be one of your government's priority then? Because tell you what, 5 year, the countdown has started already. And the longer it takes to fix GCOM and get things right for elections.
It is one of the highest priority. And I am telling you that from the first week in government, last week, work started. It's not that we have done nothing. A lot of work has been done. And it is a work in progress. But you will see in due course, in very short period.
Right. Meaning this question I would have usually reserved for Mr. Ben when he comes here. But meaning no deference to Mr. Ben or to Mr. Ramjet. And have you guys found any proof of the Russians and their interference in the last election, sir?
I don't know if that was the effect of some beverage that originated or is popular in Russia that caused Mr. Ramjatan to cite Russians. You know, there's a particular beverage that it originated in Russia? Yes. That when you drink enough of it, you see Russians. Ramjatan is always connected publicly with this beverage. But no, speaking for myself, I haven't seen any as Attorney General, but I'll get back to Ben and ask him if he saw any Moscovian.
Okay.
Was it from Moscow?
Well, I don't know. One was Libyan, one was Russian, and something else. Sir, in terms of I know this is not your forte per se, but because you are here, I have to ask you anything on the PPP's final list of members of parliament as yet?
For the future, please recognize that government is compartmentalized and government ministers guard their responsibilities and portfolio.
That's
jealousy
right.
And zealousy. And that is something that they should do. But that is a question for the executive of the party. And
well, I'm talking to a member of the
I
executive.
know, I know. I said that in relation to what you said about government. We are in the process of finalizing that.
Okay, okay. AG, on the another note, the under the APNO AFC government, at least for the first year or 2 years of APNO AFC taking office, a number of technical jobs were advertised and the process went through where persons applied for jobs. They didn't get it because ultimately political appointments did happen. Will the PPP under at least the areas you are, sir, be advertising positions for persons to apply? Technical positions?
Well, I would think so that the government, look, in government, you have to deal with concepts and processes. Government is too big to deal with transactions by transactions.
Mm-hmm.
In our manifesto, we have committed to transparent government. We have committed to accountable government. Those commitments, in my view, embrace appointments that are done in a transparent way. Of course, if a man has a special skill, right, you always, the same way, for example, when this government had to assemble, our government had to assemble a team to go to the World Court to settle the Suriname dispute. We didn't advertise. You chose persons with that expertise. This government did the same.
Right.
We retained Carl Greenidge, to continue in the engagement. We retain the same grouping of personnel to continue representing us.
Right.
I give you that example to show you that circumstances will differ.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have people with different abilities.
Right.
Yog Mahadev is an executive of, high standing.
So tell us a little bit more, AG, because I was going to ask you about Mr. Carl Greenidge. Tell us a little bit more about the political thought in retaining Mr. Carl Greenidge.
The PPP's philosophy and political position has always been, when it comes to matters of territorial sovereignty, when it comes to matters involving our borders, there is no internal or domestic politics.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about PNC and PPP. It's about protecting one Guyana. And that has been our position, even if you can remember during, and this is not a position now, this has been the historical position of the People's Progressive Party dating back to the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
We have never changed course. When we had our border dispute with Suriname, mm-hmm, we assembled a team of the caliber of Rashley Jackson, Barton Scotland, Srinath Ramphal, mm-hmm, and a whole host of people. Those are not PPP connected people. If
Correct.
you have any connections at all, it is with the PNC.
Right.
And now again is the same principle. Carl Greenidge is a knowledgeable man in the area. This is not where we feel that he can make a serious contribution. So on these matters, we have always risen above partisan local politics.
Right. Sir, I got a question here. I know it is not something that you would have gotten the time to think about as yet, but law school.
It is early, I know that my predecessor went on a whole frolic of his own. When I advised him, he abused me and cussed me down in the papers. He messed up the whole process. He never understood the procedure. He did not even understand the nature of how legal education is managed in Guyana. And he went ahead like a bull in China shop, and the whole project was aborted.
Mhm.
It is something that the president is interested in a larger way. And we have had very brief discussions, which, of course, we'll have to expand upon. And
Right.
as I said, in government, you deal with concepts. And the
Mhm.
concept is to bring educational centers of international standing to Guyana.
Mhm.
That is the concept.
Right. So, AG, in terms of we did discuss GCOM, we did discuss the COI. Have you been able to ascertain whether Mr. Mingo is still in the employer that is out of your remit?
No, I haven't been able to make that inquiry. Um, GCOM is an independent body, but
It is.
all of that will be known. Don't worry, all of that will be known.
Well, I guess what has been of concern to our viewers and listeners is of course Mengo et al. Would be drawing down from taxpayers' funding. I mean, at the end of the day, even though GCOM is a separate body, it is from the taxpayers' perspective. AG, if we can come right down back to what we started with, the political appointees, and in terms of this is again a question coming from a person who would have been employed with the PPPC government pre-2015 elections. The question is whether the current PPPC government would look at any of those who lost their jobs after change in government 2015 and see whether there could be any re-employment of especially the skilled ones.
I believe I believe that any Guyanese who suffered an injustice under the last administration, that injustice ought to be rectified and addressed under this administration.
Mm-hmm. All
I
right.
believe so.
And AG,
And
in terms,
in my own ministry, I have
Mhm.
been attempting to do. I have attempted, and I'm continuing to attempt to do
Great.
that.
In terms of some of the larger capital projects that would have been undertaken by your predecessor, well, the former government, let us take airport in particular, where Guyanese have seen a huge shift from what was supposed to be to what ended up being with the same expense, money expenses. Will you and will your government that you know of undertake any studies, investigations that will hold defaulters and perpetrators liable in front of the court, sir?
Yog, I am sure that you're going to speak. You see, you're carrying me into all kinds of sectors
Well, I'm talking about the law of it, right?
that
And
are really. So
specifically the contract. Specifically the contract.
get get Minister Bishop,
Mhm.
and I I I don't want to trespass on my
Gotcha.
colleague's territory.
Gotcha. I was more focused on
Get Minister Bishop. I believe he holds responsibility for public works,
certainly.
and he will tell you.
Certainly. Well, AG, I don't want to keep you much longer. I know that you have a tough time ahead of you in terms of getting things done. And let me just say to viewers and listeners, it's been a pleasure to have AG with us here. I did promise him to 45 minutes. It's been going on for quite double of that time
Yes,
now.
and
And
I have to do a lot of work here.
my apologies for that, AG, but we are very appreciative of you being here, sir. And I don't want to really go on for longer because I know we will be calling on you again. Your closing thoughts, sir.
Well, Yog, thank you for inviting me. And we are in government. I ask the people of Guyana and the people who are looking at us to appreciate that we are only in the second week in government. Government is complex and complicated. Inheriting a government where the last government was so incompetent and so corrupt make the task even more complex and complicated, especially in the context where you have a health pandemic, a public health pandemic, and on the other hand, you have no money. So it's extremely difficult and a lot of work, and people are, people are very impatient. The
Mhm.
honeymoon period is quickly coming to an end, and people are looking for their improvements in their lives because that's what they voted for, and that, of course, is what they're entitled to. Uh, we, we are continuing to work. It's a lot of work that has to be done, but it has to be done. And we will continue to engage. I'm always accessible to you. And as our program unfolds, we don't have a budget. Hopefully, we get a budget, and then
You
once
guys
we
are
get
not
a
being
budget,
paid, right? You guys are not being paid, right? Because you don't have a budget.
well, we haven't worked a month yet. I don't think I'm not sure what is the position, but
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what the position. Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance, Gail Teixeira, last week said to me on this program, none of the ministers know what their salary is because we don't have.
that is true. That is true. I don't know, but those. I mean, the point is that we have to get a budget, and from once that is done, then the programs will begin to unfold, and you will hear us outline in the parliament our vision and so on,
Great.
and the training will start to run from there.
Great. And we promise to ensure we keep you all on the straight and narrow. And ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have Mr. Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs, Mr. Mohammed Anil Nandlall, here tonight in room 592. I want to reassure you all that we will continue our engagement with various public officials. And on Wednesday coming, we are going to have no other than Ms. Priya Manikchand, who is the Minister of Education, in room 592 with us. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have you all here tonight in room 592. Again, I apologize for the absence of Mr. Leonard Gildari. And on behalf of management of the Kaito Radio, I say also, do be safe. And wherever you're joining us from, ladies and gentlemen, ensure you observe the COVID rules, ensure you wear the mask when you're out in public. And please remember, COVID, the stoppage of it is up to you and I as people to be responsible in our behavior. Mr. Nandlall, it's been a pleasure, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our pleasure to have been in your company tonight in room 592. Please join me again on Wednesday evening as I have the Minister of Education, Ms. Priya Manikchand, on Wednesday evening in room 592. You wanted to say something, sir?
No.
Oh, sorry. Thank you all. And ladies and gentlemen, as I say every time we have room 592, please remember to do a prayer for this lovely country of ours. It is still the best place on earth. Do be safe wherever you're joining us from. Have a blessed evening. Bye-bye now.